going to go ahead and get started with Planning Commission tonight. We meet once a month, and this will be our meeting for August. We've got a couple of commissioners. We normally have 6 commissioners. Commissioner Kevin Euler and Commissioner Todd Mitchell are not able to be with us tonight, although we may see Commissioner Euler sneak in here, and we'll welcome that if he does make it. So I don't see the Pledge of Allegiance on here, but we got a flag. I think we'll go ahead and take care of that. Why don't we stand and I'll lead that. Please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we've got, looks like 3 sets of minutes. Dave, I noticed there were some dates on there, 2018 and 2019.
Not mistakes.
Is this just kind of some housekeeping, maybe some minutes that didn't get approved? Okay.
Minutes that hadn't been approved. That's right. Yep.
You're going to test all of our memories here. I mean, you know that.
I just reviewed them last week, so trust me, we're in the same boat. It was rough to try to recall what happened.
Some of the commissioners have moved on and got new ones.
Right.
I would entertain that we approve all of them at the same time if somebody wants to make a motion, if they feel comfortable with that.
I'll make a motion that we approve the September 5th, 2018, August 7th, 2019, and July 1st, 2020 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Warnick. Got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our first item is a preliminary plat for the Willowbrook commercial. Brandon or Dave?
Thank you. The area that we're looking at, if you look on the screen, the highlighted property, you can see it's just to the northeast of Walmart, and it's just to the southeast of Lowe's. In the picture there, you see the footing and foundation of Lowe's as it was under construction. The property is in an I-1 industrial zone. We do have a concept that we'll show you in just a second that is not before you tonight for action, but it's just for information purposes. The applicant is looking to develop the property in a manner that would be beneficial to the hospital just down the road. And so they are looking at some office, some medical offices most likely. And so what's before you tonight is a preliminary plat approval. The applicant, if we go to the next slide, Michael. This is the plat that has been submitted for review. You see the 4 main lots. On the east side, we've got some wetlands area that is used for detention of stormwater. And then currently there's a 5th lot there out by Marketplace Drive that I believe is also proposed for stormwater retention. Pretty straightforward application. Don't see any concerns to bring to your attention. It is going through a staff review, and so we do have some conditions listed there in the staff report, one of them which would be to address any outstanding red line review comments. If we go to the next slide, this is a rough draft conceptual design that was provided by the applicant, just to kind of give you an idea of how it might develop in the future as they come back in for site plan approval on the individual lots. Is there any questions on this project?
So being office buildings, they more likely will have some levels to them, 2 or 3 levels possibly?
Correct.
And this request here is to approve this the way it sets. Will the Planning Commission see this maybe when they take the next step? What's the next step, and will the Planning Commission see it?
The final plat would go before the DRC, and then the individual site plans would also go before the DRC.
Okay. All right. Is there any questions from the commissioners on this? It looks like the review committee's recommending that it be approved.
One clarification, Chairman Tanner, it is a typo, so the Planning Commission would act on it tonight. They wouldn't make a recommendation to the city council since this is a standard preliminary plat.
So it is a recommendation?
No,
No,
not a
it's an
recommendation.
approval, okay.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
Is it appropriate to know who the applicant is?
The gentleman that we've been working with is Dave Sheese. I've known him for quite a few years. He's done different kinds of development throughout the valley. Willowbrook, I think, is the name of a corporation that they formed, just for purposes of doing this project. He and his partners have owned this property for more than 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're the beneficiaries probably, or will be in the end, of just some positive evolution that's happened. I can barely remember what this area looked like about 25 years ago. I think it was the first time I saw it, and it sure looks a lot different today. And this opportunity, I think, certainly wouldn't have existed. I think it was probably hard to envision, 2-story medical office buildings being potentially a reality back then. And Mr. Sheese seems to have had that kind of touch and that kind of luck over the years with some different things. So, relatively experienced owners there. They've been through things like this before. They're in it, I think, for the long haul. They're not looking just to get a project approved and, flip it, we might say, or something like that. But that's really all that we know at this point. They don't have anybody in mind today that I'm aware of, to actually do the construction work. They don't have any tenants lined up. This really is in anticipation of there being demand for this kind of space once the hospital opens and things continue to evolve.
Is this part of the Canyon Creek growth? I mean, just the whole area there that's owned by the, help me.
Yeah, that's a
Woodbury.
great question, maybe even for a reason that you don't expect, but this is not part of Canyon Creek. The Intermountain Healthcare Facility is part of Canyon Creek, and therefore with them being part owner in that development, they were able to have some restrictions placed on different uses in the project that include the inability for anybody other than themselves to build medical office uses in Canyon Creek. So this is right next door. Lowe's is in Canyon Creek. This is outside of it.
Wow.
And for that reason, we as staff have felt pretty strongly that this be ultimately the way that the property developed, just because, and it's almost hard to really appreciate this, I think, and to believe it. When you look at the area, you see what seems to be a lot of vacant land and a lot of opportunity for development. But when you start to think about how much of that is an old landfill, where there are wetlands, and where you have just by covenant restrictions like they have with Canyon Creek, the opportunities to do a development like this are actually pretty limited.
Yeah.
So we were kind of jealous about this site and wanting to make sure that it be set aside for this kind of use. And to date, the property owners have been very cooperative to try to make that happen.
Yeah.
So is that wetland to the right on that map?
It is, yes, which is part of the site. So part of their approach would be to leave that intact. I think today that serves something of a purpose in helping to detain stormwater in the area. That would continue to be the case. We've talked with these folks about that actually being enhanced so that, you see sometimes it almost becomes, kind of park-like and that sort of a thing, and an amenity for the area and for their development. There's really not much more than that you can do with that property.
Yeah.
Could you show us again where this is on the map?
You bet. So that yet to be finished building that we're seeing there is Lowe's. And this property is kind of right back behind Lowe's there.
And point at Walmart?
It's the white one there just to the south.
Okay, and the Hobby Lobby is going in where?
Oh, I was wrong.
Right there, okay.
It's that
That's
cursor,
Walmart.
yeah.
Okay. I actually
And
thought
then
we
the
was talking
hospital
right
is
here.
right.
Can you go with hospital there, Mike? Yeah.
Okay.
So it's likely that these 4 lots would likely be developed one at a time rather than all together, unless they find some people that want to occupy all 4, or a partner. I don't know.
It's just my guess, but yeah, that would be how I would expect things to proceed. Just as the market would, support that kind of development.
Okay.
But it seems to make sense, I mean, this totally makes sense to put medical offices close enough.
I think it's a great fit, yeah, in a lot of different ways.
I guess there's roads designed through here that we're not seeing that's forecasted?
Hey, that's
No.
a good thing to touch on, because no, there really isn't.
So there won't be anything on that wetland border
There won't be.
now?
And even maybe Mike, can you kind of maybe just walk us through where there is landfill that would probably make it impossible to build a road? We can see the wetlands there. There likely won't be any additional road connections between Expressway Lane on the south and Spanish Fork Parkway on the north, or likewise Canyon Creek Parkway on the west and State Road 51 over on the east, because you have some of those different land characteristics that just make it, I think, practically impossible to build additional roads.
That is landfill. This, I don't have a mic, so you're talking about. This is the subject property.
Okay. So will anything ever be on the landfill?
No. Well, a solar farm that I was actually looking at as we were talking, but something like, oh, maybe they'll let me do it. Oh, that.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Preview, spoiler, whatever you want to call it. So, okay, so it's not a spoiler. Well, spoiler a little bit. Anyway, so solar farm being put in by UMPA is something you'll see soon, but that would go on the east side of Lowe's, over the top of the trash. There's very limited things you can build on 40 feet of garbage, trash, tires, everything else. Very little can be supported, but the pedestals are built to beyond that type of material, so that's what would go there.
What about further to the
So
east? Is that
the
Spanish
south is-
Fork or Springville?
it's ours. I'll hop over there in a second. So you have Lowe's on the west, you have this property on the south, including that green wetlands. That's why I split the screen, you can see it better here.
Right.
To the east of that, let me make this bigger. This property is the Ridgeline Apartments project.
Okay.
Right.
This is commercial, gas station, daycare type place, businesses, similar to Fourth South in Springville. It's the Chris Childs
Right.
project. And then the rest of this is not developed. We don't have plans for, submitted for anyway, this area down here. Probably, and we do know that this has quite a bit of landfill in it. Not as deep as this. This was the 40-foot plus deep one. This one is less than that, but still has a decent amount down here. So
developable
acreage, if you take out Lowe's and what we know is going up here, I mean, garbage.
Yeah.
This is kind of it that was the untouched middle part of it.
Okay.
So arrow where we're talking about is with, oh wait, keep your overlay, keep
Oh.
your highlights there.
Right here.
And that's what we're looking to approve right now.
Yep. And then, sorry, I erased it, but yeah, the landfill is generally that area and this type area. Something like that.
How did that chunk of ground get not used for landfill?
Good question.
There were multiple
I wasn't born.
landfills. There was a
There's a
jointly
Springville
operated
one.
Springville Spanish Fork one, I think, and John or somebody might be able to correct me on that. and then there was the Utah County landfill. So that's my
Yeah.
understanding of why it's that way.
And Smashwork Parkway they removed a lot of trash to build the road, but there is trash north and south of that road. So this whole vein up here outside of that wetland looking area here, outside of the substation, that whole thing is green waste, and there's a refrigerator we found, other things. No, it was a water heater. Never mind, it was a water heater.
No, furnaces, air conditioning.
I didn't see one of those when we did our test pits, but yeah. Bet there is one.
Okay, well, that's a good overview. Appreciate that detail.
So Kevin usually asks about the landscaping of the area, of the proposed area. Do you ask about that at this time?
No, that would come with the site plan review, and so what they would do is, if we go back to the concept on the next slide, as they would come in for site plan approval on each individual lot, they would have a parking plan and a landscaping plan in association to the site plan. And so tonight, they're just looking for the ability to divide the property into multiple lots that then could be sold if the owner so desired.
And is commercial zoning different than commercial zoning for any of the other
So it's
businesses?
actually a general plan of business park, and then the current zoning is industrial I-1, and so it does allow for commercial uses or non-residential uses such as an office or medical facility.
All right.
Okay. Again, will the planning commission see the site plan? No.
Yeah, if you'd like to, we
Well,
can.
The only reason why I say is, there has been quite a concern with the commission about landscaping and lighting and parking, and we see that often in a lot of projects, but this is a little different, isn't it?
This is different, yeah, where there's not a zone change involved, so, which is typically, if
Yeah.
it comes to you, that's why. And that's why we would have somebody have a site plan prepared to accompany that request for the zoning to be changed. But in this case, in fact, really the discretion that the city has to influence things like landscaping, parking, it's really pretty limited.
Yeah,
With
because
the
there's
zoning.
already rules in place, and they have
Right.
to follow them.
Exactly, and as long as they follow them, then they're entitled to have the project
Okay.
approved. I do appreciate that they've given us this image here, which does illustrate how, and we haven't really dialed in to review it tightly, but I should say I believe this illustrates how they could develop the property and meet, for example, our landscaping requirement and that type of a thing. But again, if they meet the requirements, then they'd be approved really without much discussion.
Yeah, okay.
So the little triangle piece on the left, is that part of this proposal? Yes. Mine isn't working.
It's hard to see what's proposed there. Is that a building there?
That's that little piece that's right behind
The little-
Lowe's, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know exactly what it is.
And is that a
Lowe's
fifth?
Parking lot kind of comes right into here.
Is that a fifth lot
Yeah, there's kind of a
or just a,
Right now, they're showing it as a detention basin for storm drain.
oh, okay.
A little too small for what they've been able to market anyway, they said. So right now, it's a detention basin.
okay.
Okay.
Great.
You can see kind of the outline of where the basin would be here.
Okay.
Just one more historical trivial thing, but that boundary on the west side, it's angled the way that it is because these folks worked with Woodbury and the city so that a corner of that property, that what was the northwest corner, could be purchased by Lowe's. That was necessary to fit that building and their driveway and so forth on the site that they built on, so.
Okay. Commissioner Trainer, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time, just waiting for more detail.
Okay. Well, this is probably all the details we're going to get to make this approval. If there's any questions, great. If not, we'd probably entertain a motion. And it sounds like we will be asking for approval.
I'd make a recommendation that, or I'd make a motion that we recommend to the city council that the Willowbrook commercial preliminary plat be approved with the findings and conditions of the city.
So just to be clear, this is not going to the city council. We're making the approval.
Oh, we're not making it to, okay.
Yep.
Okay, then,
I think that's what we heard. Right?
So we just say,
You're moving that the site plan be approved?
yeah.
yep, just
Sorry.
that it be approved.
Okay. Got a motion. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Second from Commissioner Warnick. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Okay, looks like item 4, we have 2 Title 15 amendments. These will actually have a public hearing opportunity. Go ahead and start with that.
Yeah, so I'm going to touch on, I think, both of these 2 items. The first proposal, accessory dwelling units, accessory apartments. I guess it's just Commissioner Mendenhall and Commissioner Tanner that were with us last year for the year or so that led up to last summer when we talked about changing our requirements to allow accessory dwelling units in more parts of the city. And in fact, that's what happened. We made some fairly significant changes to Title 15. I appreciate Ariana including the language that we have in Title 15 in the memorandum that we sent out last week that provides the different stipulations that have to be met in order for us to approve a property with an accessory dwelling unit. Like I mentioned, we spent about a year talking about how maybe to make the changes that were made. So we've been working now as well for about a year with these different provisions. Considerable thought was given to the exact metrics of some of the different requirements. For example, parking. That was something that was discussed in detail in multiple meetings. I think that was vetted very thoroughly and in a very deliberate way. In my opinion, we ended up with the parking requirements that we have today for accessory dwelling units. We spent quite a bit of time then as well talking about which zoning districts accessory dwelling units should be allowed in. And even with that, you remember that just a month or 2 ago, a proposal was made to expand that, and the council approved that as well, to where today someone could apply to have an accessory dwelling unit in essentially any residential zone that we have in the city. One of the provisions that I think, frankly, was discussed in less detail, and I'll say this, and I don't mean it to suggest that we were in any way laxed in the changes that were made last summer, but I think coming up with a minimum lot size that could work for accessory apartments, we did arrive at that in something of an arbitrary fashion. There may be a couple of things that we had in the ordinance before that we could say was the origin of requiring people to have at least 8,000 square feet of lot area in order to qualify to have an accessory apartment. What I'm simply trying to say is that I don't think we necessarily felt like that was a magic number. I think we felt like it was reasonable and appropriate. From my perspective right now, I think the most important aspect of that minimum lot size, first of all, is having one, something that is clearly defined relative to what you and the city council's expectations are for properties that should be eligible to have accessory apartments. But beyond that, it's really a matter of practically what can somebody fit. And that part of what can somebody fit, I think really, again, in the spirit of what we talked about and what was focused on, it's really about what can somebody fit on a property without giving any hint or sign that that property has an accessory dwelling unit. You know, by design, really the intent has been to have accessory dwelling units in neighborhoods in such a way that they don't change the character of the neighborhood at all. You know, they're let's just say maybe invisible, you know, as they're in maybe a basement or now maybe in a detached structure behind the home or something where, again, they're out of sight, and essentially the neighborhood still appears to be a neighborhood of single-family homes, and that's it. So from that perspective, this particular proposal to change that minimum lot size from 8,000 square feet to 7,800 square feet, just speaking for myself, that's not something that I have any inherent concerns with at all. I will say this as well, that, and I'm going to throw out a number as a rough guess. We've certainly had a half a dozen, maybe more like a dozen different people in the last year that have made inquiries about being able to have an accessory apartment in their home where they're something less than 8,000 square feet, you know, maybe between 7,500 and 8,000 square feet. You know that it's not uncommon for projects that are in the R18 zone, which typically has a minimum lot size of 8,000 square feet. And most of the projects that we have in the city that are zoned that way were approved some time ago. And where they were approved as a master plan development, sometimes not all of the lots in that zone are actually 8,000 square feet. They might be 7,700, 7,900 square feet or something like that. And several of the calls that I've received where people have had questions about whether they qualified or not, or they didn't have the 8,000 square feet, have been the result of just that, you know, kind of little nuance of zoning and how some projects have been approved. So to maybe just kind of put a fine point on things, this proposal doesn't cause us as staff any concern. In fact, there might be some merit in doing a little deeper dive to try to see if maybe there is some science that makes sense to consider relative to whether 7,800 square feet or some other number makes the most sense. And I, again, will just maybe mention this, trying to emphasize that the effort that the city's made really has been in the spirit of trying to be much more accommodating of accessory apartments than we've been in the past, for all kinds of different reasons. That's at least partly why I think it makes some sense to consider this proposal and maybe even further changes to just make it work in more parts of the city.
I can't see a problem with a couple of hundred less than the 8,000 either, but my question would be like yours. Should we go a little bit more? I mean, is it going to be changing to 7,600 in a year? The newer parts of town, that square footage probably fits in well. I can think a lot in the older part of town on 1st and 2nd East, 1st, 2nd West, where they might be 6,000 square feet.
Right.
And they've already got a basement, and they've already got somebody in the basement living there. And if they don't meet this, I don't know if there's grandfathering or not, but if they don't meet that, that sure encourages them not to become legal. They've already been doing it for years. So, I don't know what some of them lot sizes, Mike, and maybe this is a bigger study, but again, the 1st and 2nd block east and west of Main Street, the older part of town, I'd be surprised if there are many lots bigger than that, 6,000, 7,000 feet. And I guess I appreciated what you said too about not affecting the neighborhood, because part of this is being able to have driveway for 4 vehicles. So on that size of a lot, a smaller lot, even though they're doing it legally, that could change the look of a neighborhood by pouring a brand new slab, tearing up lawn, putting another slab to accommodate these cars. So that could be a distraction from the neighborhood. So you got kind of some things going on, but the older part of town does have some challenges, where we might look at making that a little smaller.
You said something that I think's really worth noting. I almost feel like you could make a rational comparison between regulations for accessory dwelling units and prohibition in the United States back 100 years ago. Really. We can have the rules be what they are, and I think there still is going to be some propensity for people to do what they want or need to do when they can fly under the city's radar. And frankly, we have not been extremely aggressive, personally, I think for good reason, about seeking out people that have illegal accessory dwelling units. And that's a big part of why we made the changes that we made.
Yeah.
It was to try to give people a path to get existing illegal apartments legal, and to have people in the future that want to have, that use, to give them the ability to do it wherever it possibly made sense to do. So I'm not trying to justify at all people doing things that aren't permitted from a zoning perspective, but when we do have an opportunity to make those situations legal, and if it's just as simple as having our building inspectors be able to walk through a basement apartment and flag the real life safety things that potentially really could lead to a tragedy or those types of things. I'd hate to see a couple hundred square feet of lot size get in the way of some things that might be more important for the community. So maybe just another reason to be a little bit more lenient in this perspective.
Two questions. Number one, what prompted the proposal to change from 8,000 to 78, and how many people in the last year have been turned away because it wasn't up to 8,000 square feet?
Great question. So this is not a city-initiated zone change. Charisse Torrens is the applicant, and she's made application because she has a lot that's smaller than 8,000 square feet, larger than 7,800 square feet. So if this change is made, then she's eligible to apply and to have her proposal for an accessory apartment reviewed and conceivably approved. Boy, I sure wish now that a year ago we would have been in tune enough to have tracked the calls that we received, and I mean it literally, to have logged those different situations where somebody expressed an interest, but they were shallow from a lot size perspective. I know that, like I said, I've talked to at least 4 or 5 people over the course of the past year. Brandon could, kind of take a stab at it. It's been more than a couple.
Yeah, Kimberly and I filled quite a few phone calls, and I'd say more than 10, but usually they don't make it to an actual application stage because they see they initially don't comply with the requirements. Another great thing with the accessory dwelling units is the owner occupancy requirement, and so a lot of times not only are they looking at the lot size, but they're also looking at the ability to use it as a duplex. And so this one we do have an application for, such as Dave indicated, and so it's pending the action that the Planning Commission takes, as well as the City Council, whether or not that would be approved for her property to have an accessory apartment.
Is what percentage of accessory dwelling units are basements or parts of, or the original part of the original home, and how many are detached, like in the backyard of a home?
I'm not aware of any detached scenarios in the city. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some in existence. Since we've made the change to allow detached accessory apartments, we have not received any applications so far. One? Oh, one's in the works. Sorry. One's in the works. But the majority, it's basement conversion.
I agree with our chair that that it would be good to go back and look to see those sizes of homes or of lots in the middle of town where there probably are already people renting, and giving the opportunity for inspectors to come, because I have a friend who has rented a basement in that area with horrible conditions, horrible conditions, and it seems like it would be better if it was something that an inspector could come into.
I think that we may see some more opportunity for people in the older part of town. I just was looking at some figures here, and 7,800 feet is like 65 feet wide by 125 feet deep. Some of the lots in Spanish Fork, the older lots, they go way into the middle of the block, And so those deeper lots would be a perfect opportunity to have some kind of a secondary dwelling there, and this would be great for an accessory dwelling there behind that house. And those older homes usually had a garden on one side or something, so that there is enough room for a driveway back there and things like that. But there hasn't been a big clamor for those, has there? I know of one.
I think part of it could be, as soon as they see the 8,000 square foot, and they've already been doing it, they're not going to come in and say, I'd like to put an application in, and with the threat that they're going to have to be kicking their people out. That's going on, we know that.
We continue to become aware of situations where people are building new, finishing a basement or so forth, and turning it into an individual dwelling unit without applying to have it approved with the city. So that continues to happen. At the same time, it's been less of a response than I expected with the change in terms of people that have made application to have an accessory apartment legalized or to build a new one. Again, I'm going to kind of spitball it. Brandon might know the number. I'll bet we've approved fewer than 30, but probably close to 30 homes in the past year. I'm guessing, trying to be conservative, that there's 10 times that many, in the city. So we're in it for the long haul, right? So we keep it 30 a year and start to catch up on the new ones and things like that. The trend's moving in the right direction.
And the spirit of doing this was to encourage it, to help with housing problems, to help with all sorts of reasons.
Yep.
To protect the elderly that maybe needed somebody to take care of their yard and have them living in the basement. And there was all sorts of good reasons. So that would be my only suggestion, is if you could approve this the way it is and maybe task the city to look at some of the older part of towns and say, hey, we need to revisit this again in a few months after we've done some effort, because maybe the real number is 6,500 feet.
Got it. As Brandon and I were talking about this, I can remember it was earlier this week or late last week, he had some good suggestions as to some things that we could do. I'll put it this way, to maybe be a little bit more scientific, to try to really see if there is a reasonable breaking point to where we'd say, boy, to use that property for an accessory apartment, it is going to not work the way that we intend for it to. We'd be happy to do that. I think looking at kind of the geography and just, where we have lots of different sizes and that type of thing makes a lot of sense as well. I will say that sometimes we would say maybe that it makes sense to put a proposal like this on the shelf while we sort through those issues. I don't necessarily think that's important at this point in time to do. We could, continue to research it, and we could propose a different number in 2 months just as easily as we are now, and make a change then. So,
I agree.
One thing is, I think that there's a whole lot of people that don't know that they need to get approvals from the city, even for finishing a basement or finishing it as an accessory apartment. And it would be nice to figure out how to get the word out on that, either city, yeah, there's lots of ways to get the word out, but I know a lot of people don't, but I read the paper that comes in my city bill, and I just found out all the things I'm not supposed to be putting down the drain and all the things I'm not supposed to be putting in my garbage can within the last couple of months, and you know, just even if you get a little bit out there in different ways to educate the community.
I agree. Yep. I'm sure that a certain number of basements that get finished without permits and things like that, it is just because people don't know. Which, quick commercial, you know, for example, we want people to come through the front door, so to speak, with these different situations, which is why we don't charge a fee, for example, when somebody wants to finish a basement. We just want to help them get it done right and to do inspections before walls get drywalled and things like that, to where things that are easy all of a sudden become really hard, and those types of things. So, you know, I really appreciate, and ultimately it's the city council that's been helpful in letting us be as permissive and as accommodating as we are as a city, just to try to get things done the right way. You know, that's all that we care about, so.
Yep.
We had Goose in the Wild give us a demonstration of how to use the roundabouts. Maybe he could do a little show on accessory apartments.
Not a bad idea.
I do know, though, that you know, Channel 17 does a great job of getting information out to people, and I'm amazed at the number of people who will say, hey, I was looking through television and saw you on TV, you know, I can't, you know. It's amazing how many people do watch Channel 17 and do tune in to things like our committee meetings and the city council meetings and other things, you know. And a lot of people know about how many calls the police had and the ambulance people and everything, and it's because it's televised on Channel 17. So it's a great tool, and maybe we don't use it enough sometimes. Pete does a great job of producing those kinds of things, but he doesn't have a lot of help either. So it'd have to be something that he'd have to have some help on.
You could recruit the youth city council to make a video.
Hey, there we go.
I like all these plugs that's going out there.
Pete, you owe me $5.
Since these two Title 15s are quite unique, I think I'm going to suggest that we have a quick public hearing on each one separately, and then we can just move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So, we've had some questions. Is there anybody from the public? We'll open it into a public hearing if anybody wants to talk about this particular Title 15 amendment on accessory dwellings.
I did put my name on the thing. I'm Sharice Torrance.
Yeah, we'll have you come up to the mic and introduce yourself.
I'm Sharice Torrance. I'm the one who asked for the amendment because I think our lot is like 78,000, maybe like 41, something like that. So, what did you want me to say?
Just really any comments. So you're the one that's applying for this? Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we're that situation where it's like, it's really close and we just want to have an accessory apartment in the basement.
How old is your home, property?
It was built in 1976.
Okay.
We just moved here, we just bought it, so we wanted to.
What part of town?
It's
Or
kind of, it's the Mount Loafer subdivision.
okay. Okay. I was just curious if it happened to be maybe in the older part of town. It doesn't sound like it. Further east, right?
Not that old, but.
Yeah, okay.
I believe it's just directly east of where the All Abilities Park is under construction.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
Welcome to Spanish Fork.
thanks.
You're gonna love it here.
Yeah, we do already.
Okay, thank you.
So Michael is showing her neighborhood up there on the projector. And And so this area is exactly as was described by Director Anderson. It's an R18 zone. Majority of the lots are just under 8,000, and they were platted that way.
Yeah.
So it was a result of previous zoning ordinances that were on the books.
Yep. Okay, very good. Anyone else from the public on this topic? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, if we ask enough questions on this to make a, this is going to be a recommendation to the city council if we make one.
I make a motion that we, is this a recommend to the city council? That we recommend to the city council to adopt the amendment to Title 15, reducing the parcel size to 7,800 square feet for accessory dwellings.
Great motion, Commissioner Warnick. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay, got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Okay, we'll move on to the second item on Title 15.
I'm trying to find this in the papers.
Oh, in the packet?
Yeah, the packet's so thick.
Yeah, it's about
Oh,
three-quarters of the way
gotcha,
through.
gotcha, there it is.
So I'm going to try to be as just succinct as I can be. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the city's recently borrowed money, a lot of it, to build a new wastewater treatment plant. It's going to be constructed just across the street, across 200 East from the existing wastewater treatment plant. And maybe Mr. Clark, if you can just kind of show what we're talking about. It's this property right there that he's highlighted.
So this is down by the Tim Dolly Ford dealership area.
Just south of that, in fact, yeah, so to the north of it, you have the Staker Parsons plant, then you have the storage units, then you have Tim Daly.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, that's a really good perspective there. Then what he's identifying there, that's the existing wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, that's existing, and you're talking about straight across the east?
Yep, just across 200 East and across the railroad tracks.
And would the other one remain?
Nope,
So this will be bigger and better, and the other one will go away?
correct.
Wow.
What about just all the storage sheds and work sheds?
I don't know the details, but I understand that just the other public works facilities that we have on the site that the wastewater treatment plant kind of shares, they will be able to use that space over time. So I think that's part of why we're anxious to.
So this area is what we're talking about?
Correct, yeah.
Now, is this the same area where we had somebody come in and talk about storage units?
Correct.
Same piece of ground?
I think that was part of it, at least part of one of the proposals that we fielded.
Had some elevation challenges, had to bring in a bunch of dirt.
I think that's what they said, yeah.
Yes.
At least the first group that came in, that was part of their case.
So that's
for,
the actual ground, all of that, all that green?
we bought that from that owner,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
So you said storage units, and that's really what this is about, but the anticipated use of that property is what has caused us as staff to take a different look, really at the property that's adjacent to it to the south. So they're along 200 East. Development has been proceeding now for the past couple of years. The property owner constructed some office warehouse buildings adjacent to 200 East. And the plan had been for them to continue that type of construction all the way over to I-15.
Okay.
So same type of building, similar configuration and so forth on that entire property just to the south.
Okay.
And we've had several different conversations now with them over the course of the past several months that I think we as staff are pretty sympathetic towards, to where even though as we describe that the wastewater treatment plant is going to be completely innocuous, there will never be any bad odors generated from it, anything that visibly would cause a tenant maybe to second guess whether they should sign a lease in their project or any of those different types of things. And with our perspective that it's going to be a state-of-the-art facility, bulletproof, you might say, from some of those things that historically are associated with what happens at a wastewater treatment facility. They're really hesitant about continuing to invest in that type of space out of the fear that they're just going to have a hard time finding tenants and keeping them over time because of what we as the city now plan to do next door.
Okay.
They're much more comfortable doing a portion of the development with self-storage. That would be a combination of self-storage for like you or I might rent to store personal belongings in. It could be enclosed storage for RVs and boats and that type of a thing. Could even be covered storage, but not enclosed, if you will, big carport kinds of things for boats and RVs and that type of thing on some of the site.
So,
Not to say that the site's all that huge.
he's coming here, and I think he's even got another set of buildings right here now.
Correct, yeah. And
so
we've,
what you're saying is what he's learned with what the city's doing, he might not want to keep building those. He might want to do this other way, thinking the renters would be less, yeah.
right. So the issue is, because that's exactly what he would like to do, the issue is that we do not allow for self-storage units on this site today. There are a couple of corridors in the city, I-15 and Main Street, to where there's a geographical limitation as to where you can put self-storage facilities. And right now, this property falls within one of those halos, let's say. The proposal tonight simply is to change that, to make it so that this property or other properties that abut that property where the wastewater treatment plant will be built could have an exception and be eligible to be approved for self-storage.
So that's the verbiage, the ones that would be adjacent, which would be this one and possibly this one if they moved away or something?
Could be, yep.
But that's all it would pertain to, the exception?
That certainly is the intent, yeah, and I think practically speaking, that's all that we'd have.
So that rule that was set up, I believe, there is a limitation for Main Street and I-15, it's like 250 feet. So part of his property is the part that would be in violation, is that right?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And incidentally, there still is an approval process that you have to go through to be able to get storage units approved there. This would just open up the door for them to be able to make that application. And the city council ultimately would still have the discretion as to whether or not to approve it, but
Yeah.
What would be reasons to not approve it?
I think there are a couple of concerns with storage units from a city perspective. One is that potentially they can take up a lot of room on properties that otherwise could support land uses that would generate more property tax for the city and provide more opportunities for employment. So the reason that the corridors that we're talking about here were identified as places that we didn't want to have storage units was really for those reasons. We didn't feel that storage units were necessarily the best use of those key sites in the city. I don't think there is anything, from a detrimental kind of a perspective that you get with storage units. I mean, they're quiet, they're aesthetically, they don't need to be a problem. They're really benign. It's more a matter of what do you give up when somebody does. And in all honesty, it is the project that's north of the Staker Parsons plant here along this corridor that was the impetus for that provision. We didn't want to see more property with great visibility from I-15, relatively good access and things like that taken up with a use that in a couple of different ways doesn't accomplish some things that we want to see happen in our industrial parts of the community. So I think that's really what we were talking about here on this site as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think looking back, that was done within the last 4 years, I think, that ruling. And it was, you know, I think the way storage units are done nowadays are a lot different than they were 20 years ago. They look pretty sharp. You take that one that's even in Springville on off I-15, the one up on a little across from a Little Acorn in Spanish Fork on Highway 6. They look good. So I think some of the dialogue we had 4 years ago when we put this in place, it was like, is that what we want Spanish Fork, or people to remember Spanish Fork for, is all these storage units along? I know that came up, but I would think differently now probably, that they aren't as much of an eyesore as maybe we once thought they were. And I can see this concern with this property, with what the city's done. The city's got to do this treatment center probably in a close proximity. It's not like they can move it 2 miles away and do it. That's probably why they went across the street, right?
I think that is, yeah.
A lot of the infrastructure
And that's already a done deal, right? That's where it's going to be, it's funded and approved and moving forward.
I think that's pretty done, yeah.
That's what I heard at other cities.
$70 million worth of done or something to that
Right.
extent, yeah.
Right, yeah, that's what I thought. And so the overlay makes sense because it's going to be near this new plant.
And you know, we don't often write zoning regulations where we're really trying to zero in on a property. That's really what this would do, and you know, we could come up with a different approach, but we're trying to just keep it as simple as we can, so.
yeah.
Very good.
This gentleman at the back of the room, are you with the city? And can you add any insight to this? No? You get stage fright on the microphone?
Public hearing.
Questions? No? Okay, let's go into public hearing on this topic. And seeing none, we'll go out of public hearing. Any other comments, commissioners, on this? Concerns?
And it was the owner of the property that has applied for this self-storage overlay? No, okay. And they are not here?
They're not here.
Addresses?
In fact, honestly, we as staff are kind of, as a goodwill kind of a gesture. It new, huh? This is city initiated as kind of a goodwill gesture towards our new neighbor now, just to try to create as good of a relationship between them and us as we can with the new use that's going to be constructed next to them, so.
Yeah.
It helps define that area so that the other property is well aware of what can and can't be done there, and probably alleviates some of the worry of expanding over there on the south of that property.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good move.
Can you pull up that map again, Mike? So one thing that'd be nice down there, we have a business down in that area, and there's a lot of traffic with not very much east to west roads. So is that Longview Fiber?
That is.
Capstone.
Now it's, yeah.
So I don't know, I'm sure you've talked about it, but boy, if that road could go all the way through, that would sure help give us another east-west road down there. There's getting to be a lot of stuff with even like this.
That's
A lot of
true.
cement trucks and stuff, all they can go is go on 1600 north and I think it's 2700. So I'm going to put that plug out there.
Again, it's not the first time
Yeah.
that you brought it up.
But this
And I
might,
think-
this might be my last time.
So noted, certainly. And Mike, I think we've talked about that before. Just, and you said it well, there's not another connection between 1600 North and 2700 North for a part of the community where there are uses that really do generate a lot of traffic. And in some ways, it's kind of unique traffic. And the only way to improve that, I think, is to cross the city property with a connection there. The city site's going to be redeveloped, and there wouldn't be a better time, probably not a time where it'd be even possible to do that
Yep.
in the future, but, you know, as part of that process. So
Yeah.
Mr. Clark, I think, is kind of heading up, planning for those types of things. So
Okay.
Good deal.
Yep. With that new interchange coming to 2700 someday, we'll make that traffic even more intense.
And for a couple of different reasons, I think that's the configuration of that will probably make an additional connection through there even more valuable than it is right now.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Very good. Well, I'd entertain a motion on this, commissioners.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the city council, because this is a public hearing, recommend to the city council that the Title 15 amendments be for the this is for the self-storage overlay be approved.
Okay, very good motion. Got a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. All right, item 5, general plan amendments. Again, public hearing. We got a growth boundary and a power element of the general plan. Probably take those separately too.
I'll take the easy one first.
Okay?
We have a growth boundary as a city, which doesn't match the city's boundary. The purpose of the growth boundary is to identify areas maybe that have been annexed that we can provide services to, and to distinguish those areas from areas that we're not ready to provide utilities to. There are fewer and fewer parts of the community that are outside of the growth boundary. With the development that's happened, with infrastructure that's been constructed, things have changed such that much of what 10 years ago was outside of our growth boundary now is in the growth boundary. And in fact, even in some places, we have properties that haven't yet been annexed in the city that are within the growth boundary. The area that we're looking at here in yellow, that right now is outside of the growth boundary. And I'm going to say that, you know, probably 2/3 or so of it is in the city limits, so it has been annexed. And the rest of it is in Utah County still. Like we talked a little bit about in your work meeting earlier tonight, the city made a change to the general plan to change both that and the zoning of some property that the city owns on the southern tip of what we're seeing here that's shaded there with that yellow. So right at the junction of US 89 and US Highway 6, kind of squoze in between the two tracks where they meet there as well. It's about 50 acres, and we anticipate selling that property to a developer sometime within, I'd say, the next year, and also anticipate that with that development, utilities will be taken to that property. With that, we also expect that we will be able to provide utility services to essentially everything that's in that yellow area today. This has been kind of an anomaly for a while, to where even though, there's development, for example, right on the other side of Highway 6 to the south, and we've seen development slowly work its way further and further to the east for different reasons, big one, sewer, which can be really, really expensive to extend. Utilities largely to date haven't been extended into this area, but we do think that that's going to happen, and it's probably going to happen pretty quickly. So this proposal to amend the growth boundary really is intended to kind of set the table from a policy perspective to where we're saying this is the time. It's the time to start to plan for this area to develop. I think as well, it's a signal to potential developers that this now is an area where the city likely would look favorably upon proposals for development and things like that. I said really with the idea that it's largely about timing. That's really, I think, why that growth boundary was adopted by the city back in the mid-1990s, I believe, and why I think it served us fairly well over the years. But that all being said, we've made adjustments like this in recent years, so this is not terribly unique. We're probably running out of opportunities to do it, though, like I said, just as we get closer and closer to being built out, within at least our currently planned kind of footprint. So this isn't an insignificant step, but I think it's an easy one to support from a policy perspective.
Okay. Any questions?
I think it makes sense. That land between the tracks is a peninsula there that won't be serviced by another city. I don't think Mapleton has any desire to go on the west side of the tracks there. And it makes a lot of sense. Not long ago, we had a couple of the property owners come in on another issue that wanted to be included in this, and of course this includes their property. So it makes sense that goes that way. How many acres does the city have there?
53 is what the city
53?
owns. Yeah.
Okay.
And of that, probably about 45 are actually developable.
Yeah.
How much of that, would that be a third of that area?
Probably more like a tenth.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Could you show us where the city property is
you bet.
on there?
The city property was a gravel pit,
Oh, right.
so that's,
That group that was talking to us in our work session, is that in this yellow?
it is. It's in fact just north of the city property. That's where they'd like to.
Has the city abandoned the Olson well that's on that property?
That was abandoned. The pump was
Some time ago.
removed. It was capped, all of which was a pretty big undertaking, but we did that, just finished that up, I think, in April.
Were you able to transfer the rights into other wells?
I think that had been done. I don't remember all the details with that. Do you remember? Yeah.
It was always a pretty bad well. It had a lot of sand in it and different things. So
Is the storage units, they're outside this yellow, are they already part of Smashwork City? And they're serviced?
They are, yes. They're in Spanish Fork City.
Yeah.
They're outside of the growth boundary though, or were, I think. I don't think it went across US Highway 6 over there.
I don't think sewer extended to those storage units
From the south.
from
Yeah,
the south.
they were able
They
to
went
get,
across Highway 6 to get there. Okay.
so I think actually that was in the growth boundary previously.
And there is a large Central Utah Water Conservancy District pipeline that goes through the city's property there, right?
Yeah, so that, one of many challenges that a developer has to design around there with big power lines,
Right.
that easement,
Power lines go through there too.
several different things, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so the presentation that we heard during the work session is also part of this
Yellow.
growth boundary expansion?
It happens to fall within this area, yeah, so in fact, I didn't plan it at all, but that's just evidence kind of what is driving this. Development interest is there. I think people are starting, and I honestly think that the city's intentions of having the property that we currently own develop, that's really accelerated the, maybe justification that you'd have to change the growth boundary, because it now likely will make properties financially feasible to develop that haven't been.
Okay, let's do these separate too, so I'm going to go into public hearing. Is there any comments from anybody on this topic? Well, it's a different crowd than we've had the last 2 months.
Oh, man, this is,
No tomatoes.
Okay, we're out of public hearing, and does anybody want to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the city council the approval of the growth boundary, the proposed growth boundary amendment.
Okay, very good motion. You're getting good at that.
I'm learning to read what's already on here.
You're getting better. Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, last item on the general plan amendments is power element of the general plan. Oh, now he's going to talk.
Yep. So I'm Jake Tyre with Smashwork City Power Department. I'm the assistant superintendent. And we are putting forward to you tonight the master plan. This has been in works for quite some time, since about 2018. This, just kind of give you a quick overview of this. We bring in an outside firm to do basically an infrastructure analysis over our whole facilities, and also do projections on growth and upgrades to facilities and stuff like that. And they give us recommendations, and it's spread out about a 10-year period. I think that goes out to 2030. So they're giving us recommendations out to that point. And so they make a system model of our power system, and then they run it through a bunch of, stresses and loads and circuitry and different things like that. And then they present us with a plan, and that's what this is. Okay. And then we take from this, and we've actually been working out of this as of right now. We've got a couple, like the industrial sub, we've added a new substation transformer in there. That was part of this plan. Also, the Woodhouse upgrade is part of this. We are also doing that right now. So, there are capital improvement projects in this, and recommendations. And make a long story short, hopefully to have the power where we get the growth, and how we can support that in the future for the years to come.
Okay.
Maybe you can explain to us in layman's terms how upgrading these substations and building new transmission lines and whatnot will help the residents of Spanish Fork to maintain their power service in outages that you have to ring around from other substations to get that done. And so
Absolutely.
things have to be, go ahead.
Absolutely. So we do what we call as an N-1. So we want to have an infrastructure. So if we have a bad substation transformer go out of service, we had one probably about 10 to 15 years ago. We had a substation transformer fell, and we have to have the capacity on our other facilities to move so we can get the power back on, right? So this takes in account all that. So we go through and we look at like old substations that had the rating for the new capacity and the growth and everything else. So that's why we have to go in, upgrade a substation, upgrade the circuitry, so we can provide hopefully a reliable power source to the residents of Smashwork, And so it's very critical, and that's a great question, and something, we've got to be able to feed, your home maybe from several different directions and have the capacity and ability to do that without, hopefully never having Browning rollouts or tell you, your power will be back on in 3 days or something, so that's what we're trying to avoid with this.
How many years has Spanish Fork been providing the power to the community?
Oh, wow.
Ever since I've been here, so. No,
50 years?
I want to say it was the 50s, I think.
It's got to be at least 50
Because
years
I gotta
ago.
think that's pretty rare. Most communities, they probably wouldn't have this discussion. Rocky Mountain Power would be
No, and
doing it.
we were looking at some things the other day, and about this facility used to be their old shops, the whole city shops, this facility was. And I think that was built in the 50s, and I know I might be wrong on the power dates, but I know from the 70s for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Long time.
long
I think
time.
UMPA came about in the 70s.
Yeah,
And I think we had our power system well before that,
Yeah.
so yeah.
What's
Wow.
UMPA?
UMPA is Utah, that's where we get our power. They purchase our power that we get.
So there's
basically.
other communities that
So-
purchase power from the Spanish Fork.
That's
Power.
correct. We are part of UMPA, so is Provo City, Levan City, Nephi City, Manti,
Salem.
Salem. And so they buy it on the market and provide it to us, and then we sell it to our residents.
It's kind of a co-op, is
Yeah.
how I look at it, that we're a part of. We're a member of that.
And is UMPA involved at all with this process that Spanish Fork's going through?
No, they're not. This is just
just
a master
the city.
plan for us, for the city, and for our growth, and to make sure we get the power where it needs to be. Their job is to make sure they'll have the power there available to us as we grow also.
So as I read through this, it looked like you were trying to project into the future, like down to the Benjamin exit and down through Leland, that there'll be plenty of capacity to get down in that direction and
Yeah.
on the west side of Spanish Fork, where
Yeah.
it's been kind of light up until now.
Yeah, and that's, like all these recommendations and projections are what they are, and we look at these areas like Leland, and you got to balance in the plan. To build a substation out there, but we have capacity elsewhere on our system if we can get it out there to where a substation's a huge expense, but maybe we can get our circuitry, include some of that capacity we already have from our other circuits to buy us some time before we build that infrastructure. But like I said, if growth drives this, right? So if, we can get our circuitry out there, but you get some big businesses or big loads out there, we're going to have to build a facility. And we have taken that into account and do have the facilities to do so.
Okay, pardon me if this is just a question for someone who doesn't know a lot about this. Are windmills, wind turbines part of UMPA? No.
No,
it's a
the
whole
windmills in the
separate thing.
Spanish Fork Canyon are not part of UMPA.
Okay. And I also want to say, I have been so impressed with the power consistency. I lived here for 20 years. You hear about other places where their power is out way longer than ours. Like mine goes out for a little while. We're like, oh, do we get to pull out our 72-hour kits? Well, no, because it's back on real quick. But so thank you. I mean, it's such a high quality. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, we don't like it to go
Great
out either.
service
So.
for all of us. Thank you.
And it always seems to go out in the middle of the night or in a storm or when there's ice hanging all over it.
Yep, 100-degree weather's really tough on
100-degree
power
weather.
systems right now. So
Yeah.
Those are your favorite times of the year.
exactly.
You talked about a bad transformer maybe at a substation or something like that. How long does it take to order a transformer and get it in? And that, just to talk about why planning ahead is as important as it is.
It's critical. It's not only the cost, but it is the ship times and build dates now. They're so far out. And luckily, with this last substation, we were able to jump on it. But still, by the time you order it and get it, you're 9 months to a year you know, so it's not something you're going to run out and get. These are very complicated, you know, they're very big and expensive and everything else. And so when you do want to plan for it and have one on order if you've got some growth coming. So, you know, it's a balance of knowing your loads and what's coming in and when we should put these substations in and that too, so.
What's the expected life of these large transformers that are in the subs?
I think these new ones are projected to 50, right? But some of the older ones are 30. I think if you look at some of these charts in there, I think they project some of those like to 30-year, 35 life, you know. And there's a lot of variables in that. There's a base rating. If you go over the base rating, if you're at the maximum capacity, you know, all factors into it. If your loads are balanced or, you know, whatever, all the things that go into it, but most likely you're 30, 35 years for life transformer. You want to get 50 out of it, but, you know, you hope for the best, basically.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go into a public hearing on this. And I don't suspect we'll hear anybody, so we'll go out of public hearing. Look for a recommendation on this.
Recommendation.
You to make a recommendation?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the City Council that let's get this right, that the power element of the general plan be approved.
Good. Okay, got a motion. Do we hear a second?
I'll second it.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we got the last item, which is a zone change. Also a public hearing for fast gas. Dave, you gonna take this?
Does everybody know Fast Gas, where Fast Gas is?
Top
So
Center Street.
Anybody
Center
not
Street,
know?
Center
Well, there's
Street.
two of them.
Their drinks are
That's
cheaper.
true. So this is Center Street and US Highway 6. Has everybody noticed the construction activity that's happened along Center Street?
Yeah.
Mr. Trainer, I don't know if you've been out and about to have noticed it.
Noticed what?
The construction activity
Oh, yes.
along Center Street here.
Right.
That's a project that had been in the works for a number of years, and this business here, the convenience store right there on the corner, was pretty significantly impacted by the expansion of Center Street in order to be able to keep the homes on the south side of the street, and I guess some businesses on the south as well. The expansion took place to the north. So several homes on the north side of Center Street there were purchased, and the depth of the fast gas site was significantly reduced. So part of the arrangement that was made in order to facilitate that street expansion was to allow fast gas to expand its facility to the west onto what previously had been a home, a residential lot, but land that was purchased, and the home was torn down, and the city owned it. Well, ownership of that home site, that property to the west, was transferred to West Ring Oil, the owners of Fast Gas. They own it now, and now they're ready to proceed forward to have a site plan approved so that they can move some of their operation over there, fuel canopy, different things like that. And right now it's zoned residentially,
Okay.
and there we have it. So the need at this point in time is to have the zoning change from residential to commercial. In all honesty, I think we recognized probably later than we should have that this is something that should have probably taken place a few months ago. So we're kind of trying to play catch up a little bit in that regard with the zoning. But that's just a little bit of the background as to how it came to be on your agenda tonight, the way that it is, with the proposal to change the zoning of that property to commercial 2.
from R18 to C2. Okay.
They were setting fuel tanks today.
So they're farther along than I thought they were. But, okay.
So they're planning to move the gas pumps to the yellow area.
There's a concept if we go to the next slide.
Oh, very nice. So the canopy will move, they won't have that other old canopy probably. Are there, from the view you're seeing now, oh, I see, you got a whole new curb depth that's gonna change still. Okay, it's not done yet.
And it may even change from what we saw in that concept there. We're trying to work with them to get still some landscaping along the north side of Center Street and some different things like that.
Okay.
But generally, I'm sure that's what the site will look like.
So that, oh, my pointer's not, I want to use my pointer. Oh. Anyway, where the red arrow is where the pull in and pull out's going to be now, instead of farther up.
To the right and left of the red arrow.
Oh, good, that's,
Oh.
oh, right there. And is that different than what it is now? It's terrible to try to turn left out of that.
It is different. So they'll both be a little bit further to the west then.
Okay, that's
Existing.
better.
So the farthest west one today will be the east one.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like a good improvement.
I think so.
Are they planning on keeping the building, it looks like?
Yep.
Just going with the new fuel canopy?
An expanded fuel canopy,
Yeah.
yeah.
They look like they're on a 45, aren't they? Not a complete 45, but kind of an angle.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
Very good. Well, this is a public hearing, so we're going to go into public hearing on this matter. Kind of surprised me, nobody from the neighborhood.
We did get one letter from a neighbor that expressed concerns about lighting, air pollution, and I think those were the main points that she made. I guess consider that just my effort to represent her concerns relative to the proposed zone change.
Has the applicant addressed any of that with the lighting?
We're still in the process of reviewing the site plan, and certainly lighting, that's something that we can work through in terms of limiting, we call it just light pollution or spillover onto neighboring properties. That's relatively easy to do. The air pollution concern that, in fact, she's concerned with the existing use, as I understand it, as well as the expansion. There's really not a lot that can be done about that. And we're not, frankly, part of this proposal really boils down to whether or not the city has the wherewithal to relocate the business.
Mhm.
And we don't. That's clearly out of the scope of the project. And I haven't been directly involved with the property owner here, the business operator, but I understand that they've been really cooperative and good to work with from the beginning. And that this concept of them, being able to continue to operate there by being able to expand to the west onto land that we really don't have a great use for
Yeah.
anyway. It seems like it's been a very complimentary kind of a situation for each of us.
I think in your findings, number 3 states that the proposed zone change would not allow for a use that would adversely impact surrounding properties. So that should help the comment that you got from the one individual, that you'll be watching out for those things. The city will.
So they make an effort to, you bet.
Well, the applicant is, the owner of Fast Gas has multiple stations in multiple cities,
Yeah.
and he's quite, he is pretty active in making his properties look decent, and he runs a pretty tight ship.
Yep.
Like Brad said, this is the second Fast Gas in Spanish Fork, and He has one in Salem that's very prominent, and several others, so
Yeah.
it's a good move for everybody. You know, I was watching city council last night, and they were talking about, or the mayor was talking about all of the flack that the city got about how East Center Street was so hard to get through for a couple of months because of all of the work. And since it's been finished, you know, you don't hear anything. It's great. And, you know, to make a business able to continue to thrive there and stuff is a good thing.
Yep.
Are there projected uses for the land that's between that property and Diamond Fork?
It's going to be a park,
Oh.
basically, and, you know, probably not a lot of active stuff going on. There's just going to be beautified, really. There'll be a trail through there. It's too shallow to do much with, you know, from a depth perspective. So
That's
it's just
great.
going to be beautified.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there'll be, you probably won't notice it, but there'll be, you know, some stormwater detention in there and that type of thing too. So it'll,
Yeah.
I guess, kind of be multi-purpose in that regard.
Very
Okay,
good.
I forgot to come out of public hearing, so we will come out of public hearing. Any other comments from the commissioners? If not, I'm going to make a motion on this as my last move.
Good man.
I'm going to make a motion that we recommend to the city council that they approve this zone change from R18 to a C2 on the fast gas zone change approval request. I have a second?
I second that motion.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Wow, look at your clocks. We did good.
Mr. Chairman, if you want to take a few more minutes, Mr. Clark's put some time into addressing some things that came up in the last meeting relative to road projects and what some of the city's plans are. We could probably get where we're going in 10 minutes,
Okay.
or not. You know, leave it entirely up to you guys if you want us to maybe report on that.
I would be okay with it. We've got a couple of active commissioners that I wonder if it would be advantageous for them to hear it.
Fair point.
What do you think about that?
That's
Unless
true.
unless it's timely. Could it wait a month?
This has shelf life, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting proposal because we've had MAG in, what was it, last fall that we had the MAG people in here and
Yeah.
they were talking about the configuration of roads, both east and west of the city and through the river bottoms, right? And is that part of what you would be talking about?
No, these are the ones we've received grant money for, so there's.
That's already been received.
So let's do the
Cool.
real abbreviated,
There you
totally
go.
abbreviated.
Just maybe mention the ones that we're looking at, I see there.
Again, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably will.
We have great news, let me put it that way. So
Well,
this
yeah,
is-
let's hear the great
This
news.
is the, I guess, way to present. I've mentioned this a couple of times that we don't spend much money as the city on building new roads. And there's kind of an exception to that, and I'll save that part for another night. That's what Mr. Basgard had picked up on in one of the hearings that we had last month that I wanted to report on, to get myself straight. But we have just finished up the latest cycle of having funding awarded from our MPO, Mountain Land Association of Governments. We go through this every 3 years, I believe it is, to where both state and federal funds are distributed throughout different agencies in Utah County. Other counties do the same thing. There was about $90 million available this past go-round for different cities to compete for, really, with different road projects. The process that we go through involves a few different evaluations. First of all, they're evaluated by a group that's comprised of staff from cities. So myself and a person from our engineering department sit through those meetings, and projects are scored and ranked. Then folks that help with regional transportation planning evaluated the projects, ranked them, scored them, and so forth. And lastly, it is the Council of Governments, COG, which is comprised of all of the mayors in Utah County. They take the final action, and we couldn't have been happier that the 4 different projects that we applied for money for all have been funded. So now this is funding that I think comes into play 2 and 3 years from now. So we're talking about 2022, 2023 types of things. Center Street that we were just talking about was such a project. You know, we haven't had the kind of money that it took to buy 7 or 8 homes and to do everything else that that project entailed. So this is a really big deal for us. I'm not making this up, but both the regional transportation planning folks and other cities in the valley, they've recognized that the past 3 or 4 cycles, Spanish Fork City has received a disproportionately large share of the funding that's available. And it's true. You can, the math is what it is. Also, you know, we're at the crossroads of some big roads, US 6, and we've had a lot of growth and different things like that. So I think the projects have definitely been warranted. And unfortunately, if we went back, you know, maybe 20 years, we'd see that there was a time when the city probably didn't receive what we were due. But we probably are coming to the end of what's been a great run and getting funding. I'm sure projects will still be funded, but it's been a good time in this regard for us.
Good.
So that being said, Mike, do you just kind of want to walk us through these projects and maybe leave it at that for tonight?
Yep, we'll do it quick. First one is Smashwork Parkway Railroad Crossing. This is where the road is built today, if you can see my cursor, in Legacy Farms. This would take it across the railroad tracks and down to Highway 51 to connect Smashwork Parkway from the hospital all the way through Legacy Farms, past Maple Mountain High School, all the way to US 6. So this is the last leg. It includes obviously the railroad crossing, which is the most expensive part, and then significant earthwork on the south leg, or on the west, I guess, on the bottom here, or the east, excuse me, and then the west to finish it out. Met with UDOT yesterday to get approval for a signal and intersection improvement access here.
Oh.
So that's project 1, $3.5 million. We have a 6.77, I think, % match that we put up, and they provide the rest. So it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. How will that crossing be at the railroad? Just a...
At grade, similar to 4th North, with a crossing arm. And
Yep.
Has it been approved by the railroad?
no. We had an approval of sorts several years ago. There's been some change in the railroad, and so we're working through them now again.
Okay.
So, but we have a path forward, and I think 2 years is the timeline I've heard.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Nice.
It's been a long time.
But the funding's not available till 2023, I believe. Is that when this round is?
I think that's it, yeah. I was thinking some of it might be 2022 or
22 and 23. So the timing should match up when we'd have the funds anyway.
Good.
So the delay's unfortunate, but with funding becoming available, we need to wait for it to become available, else we don't get it. It's not something we can build and then ask for money back.
Right.
So. Next project is, this is Canyon Road here. The neighborhood Walmart is here with our first roundabout here. The overall master plan is to have the Canyon Road, this connection here at 2300 East, come up through to this road here, circle around off the screen, and then have another connection to US 6. So we're calling this Phase 1. It'll give us access to UDOT's facility on Canyon Road, build a roundabout here, and then connect to 920 South, which will then connect to the other roundabout. So Phase 1 out of 2.
Okay.
If you remember, there was did this come to Planning Commission?
Yeah.
Yeah, this property.
Did that get
Yes.
approved to the city council?
It did, yeah,
Okay.
Good.
That was that multi-family high density?
correct.
Yep.
So this would be This road will be built partly by them, partly by this funding, and by UDOT. So
And that roundabout is the one that's currently there?
this
one
is
that-
the one that's currently there up here.
Oh, yeah,
This would be the new one.
gotcha.
So, any questions on that one?
No.
So that one's 2.5 million, 2.6.
I like all the roundabouts the city's doing. It's
Yeah.
just super
Yeah,
proactive.
for sure.
Yeah, we have quite a few in the back pocket too, so just get ready for them.
You
So if
thank
you can see the-
our mayor for that.
That's good. That's really good.
That's good.
So there were 31 projects, I believe you can correct me, that were funded. And so this one's priority 5, this one's 21, the next one's 25. This is 800 North on Main Street. So Carl's Jr. there. The idea is to build, and Dave knows more about this than me, but basically put medians to restrict left-hand turns out of the side streets to help improve safety. A lot of our accidents and your most dangerous accidents are T-bone accidents. Impatient drivers trying to get on Main Street at busy hours, they try and shoot the gap and misjudge. So safety is a really big thing here, as well as people getting people A to B, getting people through Main Street, but allowing enough beautification as well as access and maneuverability that businesses can still thrive there, even with less access onto it.
That'll go from 800 to 4th?
Yes, 6th to 9th with the first phase. Sorry, so 6th north to 9th.
Oh, okay. And that's a left-hand turn coming onto Main Street from either the west or the east direction?
So if it has a signal, it'll be open. So we'll take Carl's Jr., for example, that one will be open. But down just past Italian Place, down here by the Tim Shanto Insurance, there would not be any left-hand turns out of 700 North to go south or on,
Oh,
And the same thing if he was on the west side?
same thing on the west
Yeah.
side. If you're going east, you got to make a right-hand turn. You can't go straight or left.
But going left
Interesting.
from Main Street up to Tim Shanto's house or business?
Is
it's okay for that.
is open, yeah. So right
I
here,
can get home.
yeah. You can still make the left here.
Okay.
But if you're here and need to go left onto Main, you'd come
Yeah,
to a
that's-
signal
that's-
or
Uh,
to the next one.
Boy, they need 3 lanes from, what, Arctic Circle? They just went to 3 lanes there by Cal Ranch, right?
Yeah.
They restriped, that was a big plus, but that just loads up so bad, clear up to 4th North, right?
yeah.
Yep.
It sure does.
Everybody, for some reason, thinks they need to be in that far right lane just
Yep.
to get on the freeway.
And the majority of
Right.
accidents are rear-end accidents.
What's that?
So the majority of accidents in that stretch, and it's the
Yeah.
highest accident rate in the city, is that 4-block stretch is rear-ending.
Wow.
But for some reason, they won't go into that left lane.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When they could merge later on,
And you can go.
they'll be single file for 4 blocks, and that other lane's open.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I don't think they'll be able to get
back.
back in, I guess.
I don't know what that is, just training. Okay, sorry.
So this one's quite expensive, 5.5 million. UDOT will pay 2 of it.
Usually,
MAC funding would be the other portion of that.
Yeah.
You got to emphasize the city's match again. So this is why, this is such a big deal for us.
Absolutely.
That seems expensive to do what,
It's amazing.
I mean, really.
It's
What
amazing.
they're doing, putting in some,
So I
It's
believe
not
it's the
expanding the
medians. I
road,
think they're
just-
re-overlaying the street. I think there's more to it than just
I think there's
putting
some
concrete down
infrastructure
it.
that happens now, some storm drain stuff, I want to say.
Yeah, and then traffic control, just while you're trying to build it, gets really expensive to have people stand out and direct traffic.
yeah.
But I mean,
As
it's
well.
$1.5 million a block.
I guess
That's-
parking on Main Street for that stretch could go away someday, right? You could pick up some lanes.
This plan contemplates keeping parking all the way through Main Street, really with the idea that with the median, you're eliminating enough conflicts that you'll be able to put more cars through, the same number of lanes and that type of a thing. So you won't need to go, for example, to 3 lanes, which it kind of is what got discussion about this project started, was a proposal to go to 3 lanes. And there are concerns about how that changes the whole nature of a road and how it works. And I feel pretty strongly that it does change everything, and I think would have a really significant impact on the community to some extent, I think to a large extent, because of traffic that is just pass-through traffic through Spanish Fork. So trying to keep the road working, but not having it, really change the community itself,
Yeah.
I think has been a priority. And I think this is our best way to try to keep the existing character while having things work the way they need to, I think.
Yeah.
So I have a question about that. Why is it 900 north to 600 north and not to 400 north? Money?
Scale.
I think it is, yeah, really. This is
Some of the reasons some don't get funded is they take too big of a bite out of the apple and they say, we need $15 million. And so when they look at prioritizing that, it's really tough. So a lot of our projects, why we've been successful, is we break into phases and then we apply over a couple years to get both sets of funding rather than just one big set. So we already got the striping you saw on 1,000 North, 9 to 1,000, the 3rd lane. And then this one, and then 4th to 6th, and I think we have a whole Main Street visioning project, right? Eventually, it'll be the whole length of Main Street. But easier to do bits at a time rather than ask for it all and have a hard time getting it.
Yeah.
And Smashwork gets a high amount of funding as it is, let alone if we said we need 25 million to do the whole thing,
Yeah.
which is about 30-40% of the funding. So
And that's probably why Spanish Fork is receiving more funding, because you're learning, you know how to.
We've certainly seen projects that haven't gotten off first base because of their scope, that other cities have
Yeah.
pitched. So yeah, I think we have been aware of that.
another reason of success is the amount of back work that we have done up to the proposal. So we say, hey, we've already bought some houses on Center Street. We have intention to buy these more, so we want to widen the road, rather than saying, hey, can you come buy these houses and can you do this? And so it's a lot of the approach, a lot of what Jared's done and Chris has done in trying to get in front of it so that the ask is a lot easier.
And something like this is a great example. When it's a $5.5 million project and we're asking for 3.2 million because MAG has already committed 2 million, and we go through that selection process and say that UDOT has already made that commitment, that really helped bolster our application.
Good work.
Yeah, that's great.
Good work.
There you
So
go.
jump to the next one real quick. Center Street Interchange. This is a longer range project, but what funding we did get will accelerate it by quite a bit. So there's 4 stages, 4 phases we'll call it. So phase 1 is phase 1 environmental. It's a study to know what to study, which sounds ridiculous, but that's the process they go through. So they do a study. We got $500,000 to jumpstart that study, where it was going to fit in UDOT's 3-year range. So we bumped it up by a couple years to get that funding. So we do a study then. We do another study, which would then be a longer couple years environmental study. This is one that's already completed for 2700 North. This would be for Center Street. And then you have a couple years for design, and then you have a couple years for construction. So by getting this funding, it bumped up that timeline, those dominoes falling by a couple years, which will get the interstate open sooner, or the interchange, excuse me.
How does that correspond to the states with UTA extending Front Runner?
I don't have a timeline on the front runner.
It's hard to say.
They're not talking much
Front Runner is being extended down to Basin.
Right.
That's in phase 1 now, which is 2020 to 2030 kind of a time frame. Whether or not that actually happens is kind of up in the air, but I think this is interesting because I think it's hard to envision there being a commuter rail stop here, which is where it's planned, for the west side of I-15 at basically Center Street. unless there's a Center Street interchange built,
Right,
which is also a Phase 1 project.
right.
So this is looking out kind of that same 10-year window. So they could go hand in glove, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
So where would this, so Center Street's quite a ways off of I-15, so how? what's
Center
that?
Street intersects. So this is where Center Street,
So this is the
green right
Justice
there,
Center
so
down
take a
here.
picture of that. This is a little off.
Yeah, so north is
There.
this way. So this is the Justice Center. This is the Ivory Home subdivision. This is the townhomes you approved a little while ago that's being built.
You can see the high school
Football.
track there too.
Track,
just-
yeah, the football field's here.
Oh.
So it dead ends
Oh, gotcha.
right here, right now.
Dead
Okay.
ends right
So it'd be
there.
built from there to here.
I was picturing Center Street by Highway 6. This
Oh, yeah,
is
sorry,
way
west end.
Okay.
past west. Oh,
No,
Yeah.
that's like
that makes
15.
way more sense.
So that's a report. Maybe one other thing I'll mention, just kind of countywide. Like I said, there were $90 million available right off the top. And I think this is a good thing, but it's a hefty investment for the county to make. 15 million of the 90 million was given to Provo City to build a new terminal at the airport.
Yeah.
So from a transportation perspective, without a doubt, that's gonna change, I think, how we're served in the valley. I think it's a great thing. But, you know, that was a sixth of the funding right off the bat that got taken out of the pool.
Yeah.
It didn't impact us. We got everything we asked for, but some other folks.
Yes, we got
Didn't get
10 to
projects
11 million. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, you think about that. Think about how much we got of the 75 million. It's a large share for what our population percentage of the county is, so.
Yeah, very
Very
good.
good.
That doesn't come without a lot of work. You guys
I'd
have figured
say.
out all of these little tricks and maneuvers.
Hey, it's worth it,
and
right? That's-
Kudos to the city and the administrators and everybody involved. Thanks for that presentation. You'll probably have to do that again at some point for Kevin and Todd. Well, with that, that's going to wrap up this meeting. This is going to be my last meeting. I started here 6 years ago after the mayor asked me to sit in, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I really have. It's a great group that we work with, the support staff, Kim, Brandon, Dave, Mike. You guys do a heads-up job keeping us prepared and on task and stuff in front of us. And Dave said something in a phone call this week. We always talk about kind of prepping for this meeting beforehand. He says, "Well, yeah, that'll be good for your last swan song." And I thought, I'm not going to ask him on the phone, but I'm kind of simple-minded. I didn't know what he meant by swan song. So I had to Google it and find out that it has to do with your last meeting and making a comment.
Did you practice a song for tonight?
No, I didn't. I've got some ideas, and the other two commissioners aren't here. I'd like to just send it to you guys in an email, maybe some thoughts that you guys might think about for the next few years. We've got some new Greg and Shauna, new with the group. I didn't get a chance to meet you guys as much as I'd like to. I think this pandemic caused a few situations where we couldn't do field trips, but this is a great thing for the city, and we do a lot of hard work and heavy lifting and due diligence for the city council, and I know they appreciate it. But anyway, I've enjoyed doing this, and we'll call this meeting over.
Do you want to talk about your replacement, or do you want to leave that up to?
Well, so currently Kevin Euler is the assistant chair, and since Kevin's not here, Todd's not here, I think it'd be wise probably just to have you guys discuss that at your next meeting, and that way it won't be like a church calling where say so-and-so's not here, they get picked.
Which I've been expecting it to work that way.
Yeah.
But that may not be best.
Yeah, I think you guys can work through that and decide that. But
Okay. On behalf of staff, I'm just going to say thanks. I could go on and on and on. In addition to serving on the Planning Commission, Brad was on our Board of Adjustments for a long, long time. There are people that have given a lot of service to the community. Brad's right up there with the best of them, and will be saying the same thing, I think, about you folks here in a few years. I've
Yeah.
had great planning commission over the years, and like you said, the city council appreciates it. You guys are appreciated. It might not always feel that way in public hearings and some of those environments, but you are, absolutely, and you make a difference. So we appreciate it. You mentioned COVID. That definitely has interrupted some of the things we'd like to be able to do. At some point in time, we'll be able to have a get-together, and we sure hope you and your wife will accept an invitation, you know, some of the things that, you know, something like we've done in the past, so.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I appreciate that. Okay. Okay, Pete, sign us off. You have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn
All
the
right.
meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner.